right, good morning everybody. It's story time with my favorite Walter. Oh shoot, my whoopee cushion didn't work. The farting dog. Everybody loves Walter. He cracks me up. Walter the Farting Dog by William Cotswinkle and Glenn Murray. Betty and Billy brought Walter home from the dog pound. Nobody wanted him, said Billy. But we love him, said Betty. Wow, he smells awful, said their mother. I think you better give him a bath. Mother walked in and said, he still smells awful. And that's when they got the first clue. The telltale bubbles in the water. He's probably just a little nervous, said Mother hopefully. His stomach must be upset. Oh, but Walter's stomach wasn't upset. Walter's stomach was fine. He felt perfectly normal. He just farted a lot. He did it when he bathed. He did it when he played with Betty and Billy. He did it when he walked around the house. He did it in the dining room. He did it in the kitchen. And he did it in his sleep. That dog farts morning, noon, and night, said Father. Well, he can't help it, Daddy, said Betty and Billy. They didn't mind Walter's farts. So what if he farts? Billy said to Betty when they were alone in their room with Walter. Betty agreed. Walter agreed too. He sat there looking innocently around, farting. Take him to the vet, said Father. Farting, said the vet, or rectal flatulence, as we say in the medical profession, and he prescribed a change in Walter's diet. Oh, look at the air. Oh. They gave Walter every kind of dog food. He farted. They dried him on cat food. They gave him hot dogs, hamburgers, lettuce, and tomato sandwiches. They gave him fried chicken. They gave him rabbit food. They made him a vegetarian. No matter what that dog eats, he turns it into farts, roared Father. Walter got the blame for everybody else's farts, too. If Uncle Irv let one slip, he just went and stood near Walter. Then all he had to say was, Walter! And everyone would look at poor Walter. Walter's wearing a hat. He has to go back to the pound, said Father. No, Daddy, please, begged Betty and Billy. Don't send Walter away. He goes tomorrow, said Father. They pleaded. Walter farted. It was all over. That night, Betty and Billy cried in their beds, and Walter looked at them unhappily. Oh, Walter, said Betty, you've got to stop farting, because Father's going to send you back to the pound tomorrow, said Billy. Walter knew how serious the situation was. He had never seen Betty and Billy again. He resolved to hold in his farts forever. And when Betty and Billy fell asleep, he walked down to the kitchen to see if there was anything around to eat. He managed to open the cupboard door with his nose, and he found the 25-pound of low-fart dog biscuits that the vet had prescribed for him, which made him fart even more. Even though he knew that they made him fart more, he couldn't resist. He ate the entire bag. Very tasty, said Walter to himself. Fart-free biscuit. And then he went down and he lay on the sofa. A gigantic gas bubble began to build inside of him. Oh, this is is gonna be trouble, he said to himself nervously. He was afraid of what might happen if he let it go. He thought that the whole house might explode, so he kept it in. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was torture. But he had resolved to never fart again. His future depended on it. And as he lay there with his tail wrapped tightly between his legs, he heard a noise at the window. He watched it slowly open, and a pair of burglars came through. They dropped silently into the kitchen. "Watch out for the dog," said one of the burglars. "Ah, he won't bite," said the other. "He's a wimp." Walter might have bitten them, except that he was so filled with gas he couldn't move. They tied a rag around his snout so he couldn't bark. "Okay," whispered the first burglar, "let's clear this place out." They took everything that they could get their hands on. Walter wanted to stop them, but he was having unbearable gas pains. He rolled on his back and he waved his paws in the air. He gnashed his teeth. "We got it all," said the second burglar. "Let's go." Uh-oh. That's when Walter let it fly. It was the worst fart in his life. It made a tremendous noise and it shot him across the room. A hideous cloud filled the air. The burglars clutched their throats, unable to breathe. With tears in their eyes, they raced for the window. They tried to grab their bag with all the valuables in it, but their arms were too weak. "Let's get out of here." Oh. They jumped out the window and they ran up the block, choking and gasping for air. Still blinded by Walter's attack, they stepped into the headlights of an approaching police car. "Hold it right there," said the policeman. When Father and Mother came down in the morning, they found the open window. They saw the bag with their valuables in it, and Walter was sitting beside it. He still had the rag tied around his snout. You'd have to say that he looked heroic. "He saved the silverware," cried Mother. "He saved the VCR," cried Father. "Good dog, Walter. You're our dog, even if you do fart all the time." And so the family learned to live with Walter, the hero dog. And that's the end of our tale. T-A-I-L. Walter's Tale. So Walter books are in the library. Oh, and here's Walter's Wonder Park, 100% natural gas powered. So there are a lot of other Walter books that you can find in the library, here at school when we come back, or if your parents want to go on Amazon or a book website, Walter the Farting Dog. So that was the book for the younger children. So now I'm going to read a really old book that was written a long, long time ago, but it's a wonderful story, My Father's Dragon. So this is for the older kids that might be watching. Now this is a longer story, so everybody settle back in, find a nice comfy position on your couch, and here we go. My Father's Dragon by Ruth Stiles Gannett, illustrated by Ruth Chrisman Gannett. And we see on the front is a little boy with a backpack on. Now in this story, this is going to be called a knapsack. And here we see a picture of a lion, and if you can see his mane, the hair that's all around his face, on his head, It's all been braided and tied with beautiful, brightly colored bows and ribbons, and that's going to happen later on in the story. Chapter 1, My Father Meets the Cat. Now I'm going to read this story and then I'll hold it up so you can see the picture that's on there. One cold, rainy day, when my father was a little boy, he met an old alley cat on his street. The cat was very drippy and uncomfortable, so my father said, "Wouldn't you like to come home with me?" Well, this surprised the cat. She had never before met anyone who cared about old alley cats, but she said, I'd be very much obliged if I could sit by a warm furnace and perhaps have a saucer of milk. Well, we have a very nice furnace to sit by, said my father, and I'm sure my mother has an extra saucer of milk. My father and the cat became good friends, but my father's mother was very upset about the cat. She didn't like cats, particularly ugly old alley cats. Elevator, she said to my father, if you think I'm going to give that cat a saucer of milk, you're very wrong. Once you start feeding stray alley cats, you might as well expect to feed every stray in town, and I'm not going to do it. This made my father very sad, and he apologized to the cat because his mother had been so rude. He told the cat to stay anyway, and that somehow he would bring her a saucer of milk each day. My father fed the cat for 3 weeks. But one day his mother found the cat's saucer in the cellar and she was extremely angry. She spanked my father and threw the cat out the door. But later on, my father sneaked out and found the cat. And together they went for a walk in the park and they tried to think of nice things to talk about. My father said, when I grow up, I'm going to have an airplane. Wouldn't it be wonderful to fly just anywhere you might think of? Would you like to fly very, very much? Asked the cat. Well, I certainly would. I'd do anything if I could fly. Well, said the cat, if you'd really like to fly that much, I think I know of a sort of a way that you might get to fly while you're still a little boy. You mean you know where I could get an airplane? Well, not exactly an airplane, but something even better. As you can see, I'm an old cat now, but in my younger days, I was quite a traveler. My traveling days are over, but last spring, I took just one more trip, and I sailed to the island of Tangerina, stopping at the port of Cranberry. Well, it just so happened that I missed the boat. And while waiting for the next, I thought I'd look around a bit. I was particularly interested in a place called Wild Island, which we had passed on our way to Tangerina. Wild Island and Tangerina are joined together by a long string of rocks, but people never go to Wild Island because it's mostly jungle and inhabited by very wild animals. So I decided to go across the rocks and explore it for myself. It certainly is an interesting place, but I saw something there that made me want to weep. Chapter 2, My Father Runs Away. Wild Island is practically cut in two by a very wide and muddy river, continued the cat. This river begins near one end of the island and flows into the ocean at the other. Now, the animals there are very lazy, and they used to hate having to go all the way around the beginning of this river to get to the other side of the island. Well, it made visiting inconvenient and mail delivery slow, particularly during the Christmas rush. Crocodiles could have carried passengers and mail across the river, but crocodiles are very moody and not the least bit dependable, and they're always looking for something to eat. They don't care if the animals have to walk around the river, so that's just what the animals did for many years. But what does all of this have to do with airplanes? Asked my father, who thought that the cat was taking an awfully long time to explain. Be patient, Elmer, said the cat, and she went on with the story. One day, about 4 months before I arrived on Wild Island, a baby dragon fell from a low-flying cloud onto the bank of the river. Well, he was too young to fly very well, and besides, he had bruised one wing quite badly, so he couldn't get back to his cloud. The animals found him soon afterwards, and everybody said, "Why, this is exactly what we've needed all these years." They tied a big rope around his neck, and they waited for the wing to get well. Well, this was going to end all of their crossing the river troubles. Well, I've never seen a dragon, said my father. Did you see him? How big is he? Oh, yes, indeed, I saw the dragon. In fact, we became great friends, said the cat. I used to hide in the bushes and talk to him when nobody was around. He's not a very big dragon, about the size of a large black bear, although I imagine he's grown quite a bit since I've left. He's got a long tail and yellow and blue stripes. His horns and his eyes and the bottoms of his feet are bright red, and he has gold-colored wings. Oh, how wonderful, said my father. What did the animals do with him when his wing got well? Well, they started training him to carry passengers, and even though he's just a baby dragon, they work him all day and all night, too sometimes. They make him carry loads that are much too heavy, and if he complains, they twist his wings. He's always tied to a stake on a rope just long enough to go across the river. His only friends are the crocodiles, who say hello to him once a week if they don't forget. Really, he's the most miserable animal I've come across. And when I left, I promised I'd try to help him someday, although I couldn't see how. The rope around his neck is about the biggest, toughest rope you can imagine. With so many knots, it would take days to untie them all. Anyway, when you were talking about airplanes, you gave me a good idea. Now, I'm quite sure that if you were able to rescue the dragon, which wouldn't be the least bit easy, but he'd let you ride him most anywhere, provided that you were nice to him, of course. How about trying it? I'd love to, said my father, and he was so angry with his mother for being rude to the cat that he didn't feel the least bit sad. That afternoon, my father and the cat went down to the docks to see about ships going to the island of Tangerina. They found out that a ship would be sailing the next week, so right away they started planning for the rescue of the dragon. The cat was a great help in suggesting things for my father to take with him, and she told him everything she knew about Wild Island. Of course, she was too old to go along. Everything had to be kept very secret, so when they found or bought anything to take on the trip, they hid it behind a rock in the park. The night before my father sailed, he borrowed his father's knapsack, and he and the cat packed everything very carefully. He took chewing gum, 2 dozen pink lollipops, a package of rubber bands, black rubber boots, a compass, a toothbrush, and a tube of toothpaste, 6 magnifying glasses, a very sharp jackknife, a comb and a hairbrush, and 7 hair ribbons of different colors, an empty grain bag with a label saying cranberry, some clean clothes, and enough food to last my father while he was on the ship. Well, he couldn't live on mice, so he took 25 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and 6 apples, because that's all the apples that he could find in the pantry. When everything was packed, my father and the cat went down to the docks to the ship. A night watchman was on duty, so while the cat made loud, strange noises to distract his attention, my father ran over to the gangplank and onto the ship. He went down into the hold and he hid among some bags of wheat, and the ship sailed early the next morning. Chapter 3. My father finds the island. My father hid in the hold for 6 days and nights. Twice he was nearly caught when the ship stopped to take on more cargo. But at last he heard a sailor say that the next port would be Cranberry, and that they would be unloading the wheat there. My father knew that the sailors would send him home if they caught him. So he looked in his knapsack and he took out a rubber band and the empty grain bag with the label saying Cranberry. At the last moment, my father got inside the bag, knapsack and all, and he folded the top of the bag inside and he put the rubber band around the top. He didn't look just exactly like the other bags, but it was the best he could do. Soon the sailors came to unload. They lowered a big net into the hold and they